Let me paint you a picture. The person pulling up in the luxury SUV this morning, the one that made you do a double take in the car park, might have less in their savings account than you do. The designer bag your colleague just walked in with could have been bought on a payment plan she's been quietly stressing about for 3 months. The guy at the barbecue last weekend who kept steering the conversation back to his investment portfolio, more credit card debt than actual investments. I'm not saying this to make you feel better about where you are. I'm saying it because the gap between what people project and what people actually have has never been wider. And once you understand how fake rich actually works, the psychology behind it, the specific patterns, two things happen. You stop being impressed by the wrong signals, and if you're honest with yourself, you might notice a few of these patterns in your own behavior, because most of us have played a version of this game at some point, even if we'd never admit it. Today, we're going through 8 signs someone is fake rich, not to judge, to understand, and to make sure that person isn't you. Hey, I'm Alice from Money Blueprint. Let's get into it. Sign 1. The entry-level luxury trap. This is the most visible one, which is why we start here. Someone buys the cheapest version of the most expensive brand, the base model luxury car with no upgrades, the starter bag from the prestige house, the logo belt, the entry watch from the brand known for its 6-figure pieces. The calculation is simple. They want the badge more than the product. They want other people to see the emblem, the logo, the name. The actual experience of ownership, the engineering, the craftsmanship, the thing itself is secondary or irrelevant. Here's what makes this interesting from a financial perspective. A fully spec'd version of a mid-range car often costs the same as a bare-bones luxury model. The mid-range is more reliable, cheaper to maintain, and has better features, but it doesn't have the right 3 letters on the back. So the person choosing status over substance pays more to own something that performs worse, and then carries luxury servicing costs, premium insurance, and expensive parts on top of a payment they could barely afford in the first place. Genuinely wealthy people often buy the flashy thing after they've built something underneath it. The fake rich buy the status symbol first and assume the wealth will follow. It almost never does, because the mindset that generates the purchase is the same mindset that prevents the accumulation. The tell isn't the brand. It's whether the brand represents a fraction of their net worth or the entirety of their monthly budget. Sign 2. Money is always the topic. There's a specific type of person who finds a way to circle every conversation back to finances. Not to be hopeful, not because they're genuinely interested in discussing money, but because they need you to register that they're doing well. You mention a holiday, they explain their points to strategy that only makes sense because of how much they spend. You share news about a friend, they redirect to their own version of the same story, better. You bring up a restaurant, they've been somewhere more expensive. The tell here is the future tense. Watch for how often the money talk is about what's coming rather than what already exists. Deals closing next month, investments about to pay off, something massive in the works. The present doesn't match the image, so they live in the projection. People who are genuinely secure about their financial position don't need to constantly broadcast it. The constant reminder is for themselves, not for you. It's external validation filling an internal gap. There's also a specific version of this that involves confusing revenue with profit. Someone mentions their business doing impressive numbers, but what they're quoting is gross revenue, not what actually hits their account. Still impressive, but not the number they implied. The exaggeration is the tell. People with nothing to prove don't exaggerate. Sign 3. The purchase that costs more than the safety net. This one is quiet, but it might be the most financially destructive sign on this list. Someone buys a luxury item, a bag, a watch, a piece of jewelry that represents months of their income, or they buy it while carrying credit card debt, or they buy it while having essentially no emergency fund sitting behind it. The purchase isn't a celebration of success, it's a costume for success that hasn't arrived yet. There's an old principle worth knowing. If you can't comfortably afford to buy it twice, you can't really afford it once. Not because you need to buy it twice, but because your financial cushion should be large enough that the purchase doesn't register as a significant event. For genuinely wealthy people, a luxury purchase represents a tiny fraction of their net worth. For the fake rich, it represents a significant chunk of their monthly budget, or money they don't actually have. I've seen people finance designer items, monthly payments on a bag, interest on a watch. The item loses value while the debt compounds, and by the time it's paid off, they've spent 30% more than the sticker price on something worth half what they originally paid. The real cost isn't just the money, it's the years of quiet stress that come with the empty account behind the impressive purchase. Sign 4. Everything has to be one-upped. You share good news, before anyone can respond, they're already redirecting to their better version of the same thing. You got promoted, they got a bigger one. You bought something new, theirs is more expensive. You went somewhere great, they've been somewhere better. The psychology here is worth understanding because it feels like confidence from the outside, but it's actually the opposite. Someone genuinely secure in what they have can celebrate your wins without feeling diminished by them. They don't need to redirect attention because their self-worth doesn't depend on being superior in every exchange. The one-upper needs comparison because comparison is how they measure themselves. Your good news is a threat, not a reason to celebrate, so they instinctively neutralize it. Watch for what happens in a room when someone shares genuinely good news. The people who immediately pivot to themselves, who can't let 30 seconds pass without making it about their own version, are almost always running a performance. The people with real security tend to ask questions. They're curious. They can be fully present for someone else's moment because they're not threatened by it. One-upping is exhausting to maintain. It requires constant vigilance, constant comparison, constant escalation. That's not what financial security looks like. Financial security is quiet. Sign 5. The social media lifestyle that only exists online. If someone's wealth is real, they don't need to document every expression of it for strangers on the internet. But for the fake rich, the experience isn't complete until it's been validated. The purchase isn't satisfying until it's been seen. The life only fully exists once it's been posted. Here's the uncomfortable mechanic behind this. Social media rewards projection. A "come shopping with me" video gets more engagement than "watch me add money to my index fund." The first feels aspirational, the second feels boring. So there's a genuine incentive to perform prosperity, regardless of whether that prosperity is real, and a significant number of people have figured this out and are exploiting it deliberately. The lifestyle you're watching on your screen is almost never the full picture. Nobody posts the budget spreadsheet. Nobody films the anxiety before the credit card bill arrives. Nobody shares the conversation about whether they can actually afford the holiday they just announced. The highlight reel is real. The context behind it often isn't. Here's what actually wealthy people tend to do on social media. Not much. They don't need the validation. They definitely don't need strangers tracking their financial business. The quieter the online presence, often the more real the life. When every post is a performance and every caption is a signal, that's the tell. Sign 6. Leasing the status, returning the reality. Leasing a luxury car is one of the most effective ways to look wealthy while building absolutely nothing. And it's become so normalized that most people don't register it as the financial red flag it actually is. Here's what a lease actually is. You pay for the steepest years of a car's depreciation, the most expensive period of its life, and then you hand it back. You've paid for the fall in value, not for the car itself. Then you start again with a new lease on a new vehicle and do it all over again. Someone who leases continuously for 15 or 20 years makes hundreds of thousands of dollars in payments across that time and owns nothing at the end of any of it. The cycle never terminates into equity. It just keeps cycling. The reason leasing is appealing for the fake rich is precisely that it makes a more expensive car accessible on a monthly payment basis. The person driving the gleaming new luxury model doesn't look like someone who can't afford to buy a car. They look like someone who chose to lease for convenience. The payment fits the monthly budget. What doesn't show is the perpetual loop, the premium insurance, the kilometer restrictions, and the fact that nothing is accumulating underneath. If someone genuinely wants a luxury vehicle and has the financial position to justify it, buying a model that's 2 or 3 years old is dramatically better mathematics. But that doesn't deliver the new car smell or the pristine badge, which is actually what's being purchased. Sign 7. The aggressive pitch. Always something about to be massive. This is different from casual investment conversation. This is the person who always has a thing. Crypto that's about to move, a business model that just needs some capital, a trading strategy that sounds almost plausible, a network marketing opportunity they're absolutely certain about this time. The pattern is consistent across different vehicles. Someone discovers an opportunity. They go all in, at least rhetorically. They talk about it constantly, recruit people they know, project enormous confidence about outcomes. 6 months later, it hasn't delivered, but they've already moved on to the next thing, equally certain, equally vocal. The previous failure is never mentioned. The trail of failed ventures exists, but is never discussed. The psychology of this is clear once you see it. If you're projecting a wealthy identity, but the wealth isn't there yet, you need a story about why it's coming. The next opportunity is the story. The potential justifies the current gap between image and reality. And when the opportunity fails, it can't be acknowledged because the acknowledgement would shatter the identity. Real wealth is genuinely boring to build. Consistent contributions, long time frames, compounding that works silently in the background. That story doesn't support a fake rich identity. So the fake rich are always in motion, always chasing something dramatic, always about to win, because slow and boring doesn't match the image they need to maintain. Sign 8. Overdoing everything. This is the one that's hardest to describe and easiest to feel when you encounter it. Too many logos simultaneously, jewelry that's designed to be noticed from across the room, outfits that read as costumes rather than clothes, every item chosen for its signal value rather than for anything personal or considered. They've seen what wealthy looks like in media, movies, music videos, lifestyle content, and they've decided to reproduce that aesthetic. Everything announces money, nothing just exists. Here's the counterintuitive reality. Look at genuinely, substantially wealthy people going about their actual lives, not at formal events, not in curated photos, but just living. An extraordinary number of them look remarkably ordinary. They wear unremarkable clothes, they drive unremarkable cars. They don't need every surface of their appearance to broadcast a message because they genuinely have nothing to prove. When you have real security, you stop needing external confirmation of it. Your sense of your own position doesn't require constant validation from strangers. You could wear anything, drive anything, buy almost anything, and because you could, you don't feel the urgent need to prove it. The fake rich operate from the exact opposite psychology. They feel they have everything to prove, to other people and, honestly, to themselves. So every item becomes evidence. Every accessory becomes a statement. The louder the display, the louder the underlying need. When everything someone wears is designed to signal wealth simultaneously, the signal collapses into noise. It reads as effort, and effort is the opposite of the effortlessness that actual abundance tends to produce. So here's where the self-check comes in. Because if you've been watching this list thinking about specific people in your life, I want to ask you something more useful. How many of these patterns have you engaged in? Not maliciously, not consciously, but as a response to wanting to be seen a certain way before you fully become that way. Most of us have been here. The purchase that was a little beyond what made sense, the story about the deal that was about to happen, the social media post that presented a version of life slightly more elevated than reality. These aren't character flaws. They're responses to social pressure, to comparison, to the very real desire to be respected and taken seriously. The question is whether you're running these patterns consciously, as occasional choices you've examined, or whether they're running you, quietly shaping your financial decisions in ways that are slowly working against the wealth you actually want to build. Real wealth is built in the accounts nobody sees, in the consistency nobody posts about, in the quiet discipline of choosing differently, month after month, when the easier and more impressive-looking option is right there. It doesn't make a good video, it doesn't perform well online, but it's the only approach that actually works. Real wealth whispers. You don't have to. I'll see you in the next one.